I never imagined that the woman I married, the one I thought I'd spend my life with, would be the one to try to take it all from me. My name is Michael, and I grew up in a small town where hard work and family meant everything. My parents had built a modest life for us, always emphasizing the importance of trust and loyalty. So when I met Emily, I thought I'd found someone who shared those same values. She was charming, beautiful, and seemed to understand me in a way no one else did. We married young, full of dreams and promises. I worked long hours to build my business, determined to give us the kind of life my parents never had. And as the years went by, I did just that. We moved into a grand mansion on the edge of town, a place that symbolized everything we'd accomplished together. But what I didn't know was that the person I trusted most had already started writing her own story, one that didn't include me. The first sign of betrayal was so subtle, I almost missed it. Emily had always been ambitious. She liked the finer things in life, the luxury cars, the expensive clothes. I thought I was providing for us, building a future that would make her happy. But then she started changing. She became distant, secretive, always on her phone late at night with that quick swipe to hide the screen when I walked in. I remember the day I found the first clue. An email she'd left open on her laptop, a conversation with a lawyer about asset protection and property division. My stomach dropped. I confronted her, my voice shaking with disbelief, but she brushed me off with that cold smile. "Don't worry about it, Michael," she said. "It's just legal stuff for my own peace of mind." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But the feeling of betrayal wouldn't leave me. And then it happened. One evening, I came home from work and the house was nearly empty, furniture gone, paintings stripped from the walls. My mansion, our mansion, was gutted like a carcass. All that was left were the echoes of our past and the sharp smell of fresh paint where she'd covered up the life we'd built. I sank to my knees in the grand entryway, staring at the empty spaces where memories used to be. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fury and heartbreak that left me gasping for breath. I realized in that moment that the woman I thought was my partner had become my greatest adversary. And as I looked around that hollow mansion, I vowed to find out exactly what she'd done and how deep her betrayal went. The days after that moment were a blur of disbelief and anger. I felt like I was drowning in questions. How long had this been going on? What else was she hiding from me? Every creak of the old mansion's wooden floors felt like an accusation, each echo of silence reminding me that I had been blind to the truth. I couldn't sleep. My mind raced at night, reliving every conversation, every suspicious glance. Emily's laugh used to light up a room, but now it echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I started noticing things I'd missed before. The sudden surge of deliveries to our house, expensive gifts that had appeared out of nowhere, and those late nights she claimed were for meetings or work. One morning I found a piece of paper crumpled behind the couch. It was a bank statement in Emily's name, showing transfers I never authorized, money flowing into accounts I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I read the numbers, each figure a slap in the face. I thought about the years I'd spent working to build something for us, and here she was, siphoning it away behind my back. I tried to confront her again, my voice raw with betrayal. "Emily, what the hell is going on? Where is all this money going?" But she just looked at me with those icy blue eyes, tilting her head like I was some pathetic fool. "Michael, you're overreacting," she said calmly, as if my entire world wasn't crumbling around me. "You're stressed. Maybe you should take some time off work." Time off work? I laughed bitterly, as if I could afford to step away now, when everything I loved was slipping through my fingers. But her dismissive tone only fueled the fire in my gut. I started digging, determined to find the truth. I went through every drawer, every file cabinet, in that mansion. I found more bank statements, receipts for luxury items I'd never seen, credit card charges from boutiques and restaurants I didn't recognize. I even found a small, locked safe tucked in the back of our walk-in closet. I didn't know the combination, but just the sight of it made me feel like I was living with a stranger. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the weight of it all pressing down on me. My mind replayed every memory, every time she'd smiled at me, every time she'd held my hand. Was it all a lie? Or had she just changed somewhere along the way? I started noticing other strange things too. She was always on edge whenever I brought up money or the future. She'd brush off my questions with that same cold smile, then disappear for hours. And there were whispers, muted phone calls I'd catch at odd hours, snippets of conversation that stopped as soon as I entered the room. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff with nothing to hold on to. My friends noticed the change in me. "Mike, you look like hell," my friend Daniel said one night when we met for a drink. "What's going on?" I didn't know how to answer him. How could I explain that the woman I'd loved for years was draining me dry? That every time I looked at her, I felt like I was staring at a stranger? I don't know. I finally said, staring into my glass, "I think she's taking everything from me, and I don't know how to stop her." Daniel put a hand on my shoulder, his expression grim. "You need to be careful, man. If she's already moving money around, there's probably more you don't know about. Get a lawyer. Protect yourself." His words stayed with me long after I left the bar that night. I knew he was right, but the idea of going to war with the woman I'd promised to love forever made my stomach turn. Still, I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. The mansion, the money, the lies. It was all adding up to something much bigger than I'd imagined. As I walked through the halls of that empty mansion, I felt a cold resolve settling in my chest. I would find out the truth. I would protect what was mine. No matter how much it hurt, no matter how deep I had to dig, I wouldn't let Emily take everything I'd worked for without a fight. I couldn't let it go, not anymore. My mind was a whirlwind of anger and confusion, but beneath it all, something colder and sharper began to form, a determination I'd never known I had. If Emily wanted to play games, I would play them better. I would learn every secret she'd buried and find a way to turn it all back on her. I started with her laptop. She'd always been careful, always quick to close the screen when I walked in. But one night she forgot to log out before heading to bed. I waited until I heard her, breathing slow into sleep, then slipped out of bed and opened it. My heart hammered as I clicked through her email, scanning subject lines that confirmed everything I'd feared. Asset division plan, property transfer inquiry, divorce settlement terms. But the worst was yet to come. Buried, in the folder marked private, was a string of messages between her and someone named Alex. The words cut like a knife. "Can't wait until it's all mine," she'd written. "Almost done," he'd replied. "Once the money's transferred, he won't have anything left." I swallowed hard, reading those lines over and over until the letters blurred in. My vision. So it wasn't just Emily. It was her and this Alex plotting together behind my back. My mind flashed to the times she'd gone away for work, or been too busy to come home. All those nights I'd spent alone, wondering if she was thinking about me. She'd been planning my downfall with someone else. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. For a long time I couldn't move. The betrayal was too much to take in, like the walls of the mansion had closed in on me, trapping me in the life I thought I'd built. But after the shock wore off, a different feeling took over, a cold, focused clarity. If she wanted a war, I'd give her one, but I wouldn't charge in blind. I wouldn't be the fool she thought I was. I started gathering everything. I took pictures of the emails, downloaded the files onto a flash drive, made copies of every bank statement and credit card record I could find. In the basement, I found old file boxes she'd tried to hide, property deeds, bank loan documents, even insurance papers with her signature on them. Each piece was like a puzzle, coming together to reveal the life she'd built behind my back. The mansion, the money, the secret accounts. It was all laid out before me. My heart still ached, but the pain was turning into fuel. I knew I needed help. Daniel had warned me, and now I saw how right he'd been. I called him late one night, my voice barely a whisper as I explained what I'd found. "Jesus, Mike," he said when I was done. You need to talk to a lawyer. Now. This is serious. I know, I said, my voice flat. But I need to be careful. If she suspects I'm onto her, she'll just hide it all again. I need to be smart about this. Daniel didn't argue. He just gave me the name of a good lawyer, someone who specialized in financial disputes and family law. The next morning I called and set up a meeting. Sitting across from that lawyer in his tidy office, I laid it all out. Every piece of evidence, every shred of betrayal I'd uncovered. He listened carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with each document I handed over. "Michael," he said finally, "this is a mess, but you've done the right thing by bringing it all to me. We'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll make sure she doesn't get away with it." Walking out of that office, I felt a flicker of hope for the first time in weeks. I wasn't alone anymore, and I wasn't powerless. Back at the mansion, I started to notice things I'd never paid attention to before. The way Emily would watch me when she thought I wasn't looking, her eyes calculating, like she was already dividing up the spoils. I played along, pretending nothing had changed. I went to work like normal, kept my head down, but inside I was plotting my next move. At night, I'd go back to the files, combing through every detail, every line of fine print. I learned about the accounts she'd tried to hide, the properties she'd put in other names. I even found the name of the lawyer she was working with, a slick, high-priced guy known for getting messy divorces through fast and quiet. I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me, but I refused to let it break me. Emily thought she could strip me of everything, leave me standing in an empty house with nothing but memories. But she didn't know me. She didn't know how hard I could fight when pushed to the edge. And deep down there was one secret she had no idea about. The mansion she thought she was stealing from me wasn't even mine to lose. It was in my mother's name. My parents had transferred it years ago, a decision we'd made together to protect what mattered most. She didn't know it, but her plan had one fatal flaw. I clung to that secret like a lifeline. It was the one card I held close to my chest, the one piece of leverage that would turn this whole thing upside down. As I gathered more evidence, I felt the anger in me turning to something else, a fierce, quiet determination. She wanted a fight, she'd get one. But it would be on my terms and she'd never see it coming. I decided it was time to stop playing defense. I'd spent too many nights tossing and turning, feeling like a puppet in her carefully spun web. But now, I had the evidence, the knowledge, and the cold determination to take it all back. One morning, I woke up to find Emily in the kitchen, sipping her coffee like nothing had changed. Her phone buzzed on the marble countertop, but she ignored it, her eyes flicking up to meet mine. "Good morning," she said, her voice sweet and detached. "Morning," I replied, forcing my voice calm. My hands were steady, my heart quiet. I knew what I had to do. "I'm heading out today," she said breezily. "Meeting some friends for brunch, don't wait up." I nodded, watching her gather her designer purse and leave. The door clicked shut behind her, and the silence that followed felt like a breath of fresh air. I called Daniel, my voice low and sure. "It's time," I told him. "I'm done waiting." We met at the lawyer's office that afternoon. Papers were laid out on the polished wood table, copies of every bank statement, emails with Alex, property records. The lawyer looked at me across the table, his expression resolute. "You're ready for this?" he asked. I nodded. More than ready. We filed the paperwork that day, an official legal challenge to her claims. We documented everything, down to the last dollar she'd tried to siphon off. But I didn't stop there. I wanted her to feel the sting of her own deception, so I called Emily's lawyer directly, set up a meeting with him to lay it all out. I wanted her to know that I knew. No more secrets. When I walked into that meeting, Emily was already there, sitting next to her lawyer with that same smug smile on her lips. She looked up as I entered, her eyes narrowing. "Michael," she said softly, "what is this about? We could have handled this privately." "I'm done handling things privately," I said, my voice even. I laid the stack of documents on the table, watching her face as she flipped through them. Each page was a nail in the coffin she'd built for herself, bank transfers, messages to Alex, property deeds she thought were hers. Her smile faltered. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Emily," he said quietly, "these are serious allegations." She turned to me, her eyes flashing with anger. "You went through my things?" I leaned back, my jaw tight. "I did what I had to do. You thought you could take everything from me, but you didn't know the one thing that mattered most." She looked at me, confused. "What are you talking about?" "The mansion," I said, letting the words sink in. "You thought it was yours to take. But it's not in my name. It never was. My mother owns it outright. You can't touch it, Emily. You never could." For a moment, there was silence, thick and heavy. Emily's face drained of color as the realization hit her. Her lawyer cleared, his throat flipping through the deeds I'd provided. "It's true," he said. "This property isn't part of the marital assets. It's beyond your reach." Emily's lips parted, a shaky breath escaping. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible." I felt a surge of triumph, a final fierce clarity. "You spent months, maybe years planning this," I said, my voice steady. "You tried to strip me of everything I built, but you never took the time to see the one thing you couldn't steal. My family made sure of that." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I stood, gathering the papers. "This meeting is over," I said, my voice cold. "I'll see you in court. And Emily, you're not going to win." As I walked out of that room, I felt the weight of years of betrayal fall from my shoulders. My chest ached with the memory of everything I'd lost. But there was something else there now. Something stronger. The knowledge that she hadn't broken me. That I'd fought back and found a way to protect what mattered most. Daniel was waiting for me outside, his face lit with pride. "You did it," he said, clapping me on the back. "You showed her she couldn't take you down." I nodded, the cold air filling my lungs like a promise. "I'm not done yet," I said, "but this is a start." We walked back to my car together, the sun setting behind the mansion she'd thought she owned. The windows glowed gold in the light, and for the first time in a long time I saw it not as a symbol of what we'd shared, but as a testament to what I'd protected. The life I'd built. The strength I'd found in myself. As I drove away, that evening, I knew there was still more to come. More legal battles. More nights spent fighting for what was mine. But I also knew that I wasn't the man who'd walked into that marriage blindly, trusting that love alone would protect me. I was someone else now. Someone who knew that even in the face of betrayal, there was always a way to stand your ground and claim your life back. And that was a power no one could take away. The weeks that followed moved in a strange, suspended rhythm, like the calm after a violent storm. Emily's betrayal was no longer a shadow lurking in every corner of my life. It was a story laid, bare for all to see. The mansion stood firm in my mother's name, untouchable by her desperate hands. And while she fought to salvage what she could, the evidence I'd uncovered left her with nowhere to hide. Her lawyer tried to argue, to twist the facts in court, but the documents spoke for themselves. The judge ruled that the mansion was not marital property, and Emily's plans to claim it crumbled in front of her. She sat there in the courtroom, her face a mask of defeat, the weight of her own schemes finally settling on her shoulders. Word of her betrayal spread quickly in our small community. Friends and neighbors who'd once been charmed by her polished smiles now looked at her with something closer to pity or disgust. I could feel the shift everywhere I went. At the grocery store, in the coffee shop, people stopped me, their voices hushed but warm. "We're sorry," they said. "We had no idea." And for the first time, I didn't feel ashamed. I'd spent so long doubting myself, wondering if I'd missed the signs or if I was somehow to blame. But the truth had come out, and with it, a sense of quiet vindication. Emily had been the architect of her own downfall, and now she had to face the reality she'd tried so hard to bury. The mansion was mine again, or at least back where it belonged. I walked through those empty rooms with a new perspective. The echoes of our past still lingered. The laughter, the quiet nights, the whispered dreams, but they didn't haunt me anymore. They were just memories, no longer weighted with betrayal. Won't lie and say it was easy. There were nights when I'd lie awake, the silence pressing in, and wonder how everything had fallen apart so completely. I'd remember the way she'd smile at me in the early days, the way she'd trace her fingers along the edge of the kitchen counter as she talked about the future, and I'd feel that ache in my chest, a hollow place where trust used to live. But each day, that ache grew a little smaller. Each sunrise brought a new chance to build something real, something honest. I wasn't naive anymore, and maybe that was its own kind of gift. I knew what betrayal looked like now. I knew what it felt like to stand at the edge of ruin and choose to fight back. The legal battles weren't over completely. There were still loose ends to tie up, accounts to sort through. But Emily's mask had been ripped away for good, and she could no longer hide behind the lies she'd woven so carefully. And me? I was finally free. Not just from her schemes, but from the doubts that had kept me awake at night. The mansion stood tall, a testament to my resilience, and in its quiet halls, I found the beginnings of something I'd thought I'd lost forever. Peace in the months that followed. Life slowly began to settle into a new, unfamiliar rhythm. The mansion, once a symbol of everything that had gone wrong, felt different now. The coldness in its walls, the echoes of laughter that had once been real and then turned hollow, began to soften. I took my time to walk those halls each morning, breathing in the silence that no longer felt like a burden, but like a promise. The grandeur of the house didn't intimidate me anymore. It didn't feel like a monument to betrayal, but rather a quiet testament to everything I'd survived. I started making changes, small, deliberate steps to reclaim the life I'd nearly lost. I repainted the kitchen, tore out the old curtains, and let the light flood in through the windows. Each change was a statement, a declaration that I was no longer living in the past. I even invited my mom to come visit more often. She'd always loved this house, and seeing her here, smiling and telling me stories from my childhood, reminded me of what truly mattered. Work was still demanding, but it became something I did for myself, not just for someone else's approval. I stopped measuring my worth by the size of my paycheck or the weight of the house I lived in. Instead, I focused on what I could control, my integrity, my decisions, the people I chose to trust. I saw friends again. Daniel and I would sit on the back porch sharing beers and talking about everything but the past. He told me more than once how proud he was that I'd stood my ground, and I started to believe it myself. The shame that had clung to me like a second skin began to peel away, replaced by a quiet pride in the man I'd become. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about Emily. I'd wonder if she ever regretted what she'd done, if the empty victories she'd chased after gave her any kind of comfort now. But those thoughts didn't keep me awake anymore. I let them come and go like passing clouds, no longer heavy enough to darken my skies. I started to understand that healing wasn't about erasing the pain. It was about learning to live with it, letting it shape me without letting it define me. I'd been broken down to my foundation, but I'd rebuilt, stronger and wiser than before. One evening, I stood on the balcony overlooking the grounds. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. I felt the weight of everything I'd endured and everything I'd reclaimed. The mansion, the memories, the pain, they were all a part of me now, but they didn't own me. I'd faced the worst and found my way back to something solid and real. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. I had no illusions left, but I had something better. Clarity. I knew who I was. I knew what I deserved. And I knew that no one, no matter how charming, no matter how convincing, would ever take that from me again. As the last light of the day faded into twilight, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The future stretched out before me, unknown, but mine, and I was ready to face it. Looking back, I see now that betrayal doesn't just steal your trust. It tries to steal your sense of self, your belief in your own worth. But I've learned that even in the deepest moments of betrayal, there's a choice. You can let it define you, or you can let it sharpen you. I chose to let it sharpen me. I realized that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting up, even when your heart is in pieces. It's about facing the truth, no matter how much it hurts, and finding the courage to start over, with nothing but your own two hands. Betrayal had tried to break me, but in the end, it showed me who I really was. A man who could stand up for himself, who could fight for what mattered, and who wouldn't be brought down by someone else's lies. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the memories still burned, when the ache of what I'd lost felt too heavy to carry. But each day I chose to keep going, to keep building something honest and real. And in that choice, I found my freedom. I learned that true strength comes from within, not from the house you own or the money in your account, but from the quiet determination to live life on your own terms. To trust yourself even when no one else does, to refuse to be defined by someone else's betrayal. As I stand here now, the mansion behind me bathed in the light of a new day, I know that I've reclaimed more than just a house. I've reclaimed my dignity, my peace, and my future. And that's something no one can ever take from me again. So if you're listening to this, if you're carrying your own secret wounds and heartbreaks, know this: you are stronger than you think. Your worth isn't tied to someone else's choices, and your future doesn't belong to anyone but you. The world may try to knock you down, but you have the power to rise again, to stand tall in the face of everything that tried to break you, because, in the end, the mansion wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was a symbol, a reminder that no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how high the walls someone else builds around you, your spirit is yours alone, and that is something that can never be stolen.